All righty. Welcome everyone. You are joining the Harnessing Collective Impact Driving Change Together session. Today we are going to be talking about collective impact and getting into some of the nuts and bolts on it. I am Oleni Lilly. I am part of the OIE Technical Assistance team, and I will be your presenter today. I am also joined by our fabulous producer, Dave Mazzo. He will be helping me monitor the chat. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and I will be taking some time throughout my presentation to take a pause and see if there's any questions in the chat. Also, as you're looking at the platform, you'll see that I've uploaded a whole bunch of resources. There's a bunch of links to websites as well as some actual tools that are out there. And I'm using a lot of these tools and a lot of this information that I provided for in that resource library throughout this presentation. And so I really want you to take advantage of that, those tools again, the links, and there's also some research and some papers written, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get started. Today we're going to be hopefully giving you a better understanding of collective impact. We're also going to talk a little bit about the benefits and challenges, and then also some key steps to success if you are thinking about implementing a collective impact. And then at the end, we'll have a final round of questions. But again, like I said, I will be taking some pauses throughout my presentation to be able to take any of your questions or your comments even. Maybe you actually had some experience with collective impact, and so it'd be great to hear and for you to share that as well. So let's dive in. We're going to be talking about understanding collective impact. And you may be like, Oleni, like, why are you talking about this? And one of the things I want to provide a little bit of a origin or a history story for you about me and collective impact. I'm very passionate about it. I became aware of it, I'd say about maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little less, when I was Googling, and I was looking for like meaningful collaboration. And one of the things that popped up was collective impact. And so I wanted to get into it. And what I found was that collective impact is the commitment of a group of actors from different sectors to a common agenda for solving a complex social problem. And so really, one of the key sort of pieces about collective impact is that it really is a process and a framework that you can use to really do some systemic change. And collective impacts range in topics, anywhere from like educational achievement, poverty, at-risk youth, healthy early childhood education, homelessness, also workforce development. So any sort of topic or problem or opportunity that's out there that is complex, and really the work is around changing the system, and it's systemic change. So what are the sort of key elements that you can sort of come to learn and maybe see out in the world and say, hey, that has some elements of collective impact? And those elements are a common agenda, shared measurements systems, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and a backbone support organization. Collective impact is an approach to addressing, again, like I said, complex social issues that involves bringing together diverse stakeholders. And a lot of times they use the term cross-sector stakeholders from, again, different sectors to work collaboratively towards a common goal. It recognizes that no single organization or sector can solve complex problems on its own, and emphasizes the need for coordinated action and shared accountability. And so it's sort of, I liken it to like, collaboration times like 5 or 10. And it provides a structure in order to create some real meaningful impact. So let's get into, we're going to dig into the different parts, the different elements of a collective impact project. And so the first step is to create a common agenda. So one of the first pieces is to really sort of map your stakeholder and look at engagement. And so to do this, there are many different ways, but one of the ways may be to identify and map key stakeholders who have a vested interest in addressing the social issue. The other part is about engaging stakeholders representing diverse perspectives, including community members, organizations, government agencies, businesses, and experts. So for example, one of the stakeholder mapping pieces, maybe around workforce development, might be including, the universities, small business owners, maybe unions. Also, maybe there might be an element of housing, maybe some of the employment, what do they call it? Like those entities that sort of collect employment opportunities, and then you can go and like Altruist or something like that, a company that actually helps to hire people. You bring all those cross-sector people and really try to identify those groups, anybody who might be interested in, say, for example, workforce development. The next step is really to conduct a needs assessment and analysis. Through the needs assessment, you really want to help to understand the root causes and complexities of the social issue. You will start by analyzing existing data, maybe research and insights to inform decision-making and prioritize areas of focus. The next sort of step around developing or creating a common agenda is to facilitate collaborative workshops or meetings. And this is really where you gather that cross-sector of stakeholders and bring them together to participate in facilitated workshops or meetings to begin the dialogue and collaboration. You really want to, from the get-go, create a safe and inclusive environment for stakeholders to share and bring their perspectives and experiences and priorities related to the issue to the table. And then you want to begin to establish common ground and vision. And so through these meetings, you begin to facilitate discussions to identify common values, goals, and aspirations among your stakeholders, and then really work towards consensus on developing this shared vision or common agenda that reflects the collective aspirations for addressing a particular social issue. And then you want to get into defining goals and objectives. And so really translating that shared vision into specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals and objectives. And I know all of our OIE grantees are very familiar with the acronym SMART when it comes to goals and objectives. And then the next step you really want to do is sort of looking at breaking down larger goals into actionable steps that stakeholders can collectively work towards. The next step is to really, again, to clarify roles and responsibilities. And you will see this as we go through this presentation. There are different levels of roles and responsibilities for each stakeholder, and a particular stakeholder may participate at various levels. And so they may be, for example, on a leadership team. They may also be in maybe some working groups, and also their organization may be participating and providing and connecting the organization of their data up through the collective impact project. And so you could have an organization participating at various levels, but you really want to sort of map out what that would look like in order to ensure clarity around decision-making processes, resource allocations, and accountability mechanisms. And then, of course, one of the things that you should be, starting from the very beginning is really sort of setting your sights around building trust and relationships. Those are very key. And with collective impact, because you're going to be asking, a lot of sharing and also potentially organizations changing some of the ways they do things, it has to come from a place of being heard, being trusted, and really strong relationships that you build over time, but you have to be intentional about building those relationships. And that's a key aspect of everything, right? Of all our work, but definitely with collective impact, because there will be times where you may be asking people again to change things that they've been doing for years, or to share information that they've been holding for years. And so there are some walls and silos that need to be broken down, and that can best be done when you have strong trust and relationships. The next piece is really to document and communicate this common agenda, not just internally, but also externally, to bring people along and to always look for opportunities in which you can connect other people in and grow your collective impact and your stakeholder, and to create a very diverse cross-sector of organizations, businesses, and people coming to the table to solve, again, it should be a very complex social issue. And then once you've done all of that, it's not set in stone, right? I mean, we always are wanting to iterate and refine. And so you will be building in throughout the process of collective impact. Data collection will become a norm as a norm part of collective impact. And so you'll find at various levels and throughout the entire collective impact that iterate and refine is an ongoing sort of mantra, because really collective impact prides itself on being data driven. And so I just wanted to share a few examples of what a common agenda could be. And so our first example of a common agenda is from Strive Together. Again, that link should be in your resources for this session. Strive Together is a national movement dedicated to improving educational outcomes for every child, creator to cradle, creator to career, through a community-driven approach by bringing together diverse stakeholders, including educators, parents, policymakers, and local leaders. StriveTogether.org fosters collaboration and collective action to address the complex challenges facing education systems across the United States. Through their proven framework, StriveTogether.org empowers communities to set shared goals, track progress, and implement evidence-based strategies to ensure every child has the opportunity to succeed. They are also focused on equity and data-driven decision-making, as well as driving systemic change and creating brighter futures for children and the communities they live in nationwide. Now, Strive Together is a really interesting organization because they provide assistance to communities across the nation who are focused on this same goal. And they provide a lot of resources, and you can see that in their website or in the links that I've shared, some of the documents I shared about this sort of wealth of training and resources for you to be able to do this within your own community. Another common agenda I'd love to share is this one around communities ending poverty. And so this is a really powerful collective impact movement comprised of 330 municipalities and represented by 80 regional boundaries. And this is in Canada. They've learned that to end poverty, it takes the whole community and their entire country working together. Their members ensure that all sectors are brought to the table, harness the assets of their communities, and drive long-term change as they develop and implement plans to reduce poverty in their communities. And so there's a little bit of older information, but between 2015 and 2018, that organization contributed to poverty being reduced by more than 1 million Canadians during that time period. And so again, really setting goals, coming together. You can see that's a very broad stakeholder group around poverty, which is one of the more complex issues that we face. And so here's some tools. Again, you can find all these tools in some of the information I provided. This tool really can be used to help clarify and reach agreement on the scope and the reach of the collective impact initiative. It emphasizes the importance of defining what is and what isn't included in the initiative's work, while also recognizing the need to revisit and potentially adjust the scope over time. Again, you want to be able to iterate, and nothing is necessarily set in stone, but most of the time you don't change things unless the data indicates a need for change. And so you can use this tool again for those purposes. Here's another great tool that's provided for you to help to develop a common agenda. This worksheet aims to provide greater clarity about your team's issue by guiding you through 6 stages. And at the end, there are additional reflection questions to aid in building your common agenda. So again, just a couple of tools to help you move through and develop your common agenda. And there's more information, again, like I said, in the resources I provided. So now let's move on to what is and how do you develop shared measurement systems? And so here are the steps again. You can see number 9, where there again with iterate and improve. That will again, you'll see that come up over and over again with collective impact. So one of the first steps is to identify common outcomes and indicators. So once you know what your vision is, you really want to engage your stakeholders to develop and or identify common outcomes that will align with the goals of the collective impact initiative, and then to develop specific indicators that can measure progress towards these outcomes, ensuring that they are measurable, relevant, and actionable. This is really key. Again, this is not just an exercise or an activity around common outcomes and indicators, but again, embedded in this needs to be a focus and intention around relationship and trust building. And then you want to look at how you're going to align data collection methods. And so really coming to some agreement on the standardized data collection methods and tools to ensure consistency across stakeholders, and to also determine how data will be collected, including who will collect it, when, and how frequently. Now, this is a key piece that may be going in and have an impact within the community organizations and or larger organizations like universities. And so again, I mean, you're going to hear me say this over and over again, like trust and relationship building is key, because sometimes these outcomes and indicators and collection methods can become very, how will I say this? Very organizational personal, right? I mean, organizations have a hard time releasing some of this information or releasing control or determining that maybe in addition to the data they're currently collecting, they're going to add on other data that they will be collecting, or potentially remove some of the ones that they're doing and totally change what they've been collecting in order to realign it. So really to make those decisions and have those be embedded in other people's organizations is a key piece that becomes really difficult if you have not intentionally set out to build strong, trusting relationships. Establish data sharing agreement. That's one tool. I know many of our grantees have established data sharing agreements. Is a key factor in being able to share maybe school, university, program level data and have it funnel up. Also, to make sure that the collective has processes in which, not student identifiable information is not sort of moved up in the organization. And so I've been in a collective impact where we discussed a shared ID, student ID number, both between the data collection, the receivers of the data and the organization that is sending the data. And so again, a lot of those pieces have to be worked out. Building that data infrastructure, that's what I was talking about. Again, a centralized data infrastructure or platform to aggregate, manage, and analyze data from multiple sources. And again, a big source of that data, and I think in particular within Native communities, is actually coming up, the source is actually coming up from communities and programs. And so we know that a key piece of building and being able to collect that data is not just trust and relationships, but also that the people who are providing that, the communities that are providing that information feel like they're a part of that data, but also that they are getting a benefit back by sharing their data. And then the next one is to define data governance process. And I've really been talking about that all the way through here. Agree on reporting protocols. That is a little bit about what I talked about earlier about it could be all the way down to the form, the permission forms, so that again, if you're at a school level or a community level, parents know where this data is going and where they might see it pop up, even though it doesn't have their actual child's name, but they might see the school or their community area and where they're actually seeing this data pop up, and that it does provide a benefit to the larger community. So really establishing those data governance policies, and then also providing training and capacity building. And so while maybe that shared hub of where you're really collecting and aggregating and interpreting all that data has the capacity, it's really working with the individual communities or organizations or schools to develop the capacity within their own community to not just do surveys and collect it and put it up, but also to take the information that they're gaining from their communities and be able to replicate the process at the community level to make the changes that they need to see. And so it's really this back and forth flow. I liken it to sort of like the ocean and the currents and the tides of when the ocean comes up on shore and it gets the sand all wet, and then it pulls out some of the sand and the rocks back out to the ocean, and then that goes into the ocean, and hopefully it's healthy things going back into the ocean, and it replenishes the ocean. And so it's really feeding both sides of that data conversation, I guess, or ocean. And then always wanting to monitor and evaluate the progress. And so part of the piece is that, like I said, is making sure that the data that's being collected then gets pushed out and is used. And that you are developing both at the larger collective, but also down into, again, like the partners and the stakeholders of the collective to really make change at the programmatic and community level. And then again, there we go, iterate and improve. I'm going to stop and see, Dave, do we have any questions yet? I know I've been sort of
Alani, not
rambling.
at this moment. There are not any questions. But one is asking if your slides would be available.
Yes. Yeah. And so that will get placed. This will be a recording, and it will get placed with the recording. And then again, in the platform, I have all of these. I have the tools that I got some of this from, and then the links for all of this information. And most of the information I'm sharing with you is from sort of these national organizations. And I don't know, I'm a kind of a collective impact nerd. I can get lost in that, and I can get really deep in the rabbit hole. But please, I put that there so that will be helpful to you. Okay, well, let's move forward. And so here's an example of what a shared measurement example looks like. And this does not have any measures, but this is really sort of the theory of change. And this is connected to the Strive Together. And so you can see they are looking at career readiness, early grade reading, middle school math, high school graduation, post-secondary enrollment, and then again, completion, employment, which leads to achieving that big societal goal around economic mobility. And here I've shared a shared measurement mapping tool. This is a handout, again, that it should be in the links. It helps around collaborative community change efforts involving multiple partners and stakeholders working towards a common goal. The shared measurement tool helps generate initial benchmarks or targets for collaborative work, while there's also an outcomes diary tool also found in the toolbox that offers a simple and effective way to monitor and report progress indicators. These tools support the collaborative effort in tracking progress and staying accountable to your shared goals in a collective. And so, again, just another helpful tool for you. We move to the third element of collective impact, and that's around creating mutually reinforcing activities. This is really where you are sort of taking what's going on within your program and wanting to look at what other people are doing, seeing how, maybe there's gaps, seeing maybe where you can partner, where you can work collaboratively to have a larger impact. And so here are some of the steps you can go through in order to create mutually reinforcing activities. The first one is to look at and identify interdependencies and synergies. This is really to explore the interdependencies between different stakeholders, activities, and initiatives, and identify opportunities for collaboration and synergy where stakeholders' efforts can reinforce and complement each other. You can see again, the second step is around facilitating collaborative planning. And so normally within the collective impact framework, you begin to sort of break up into like working groups that are usually focused around the key outcomes you are trying to achieve. And so you begin to do some collaborative planning in those smaller groups. And those are all like co-facilitated, or I'm sorry, they're facilitating meetings with co-created action plans within a specific area. And I'll show you an example in a couple of slides. During this time, you really want to encourage open dialogue and brainstorming. And this is where you begin to, again, build strong trust and relationships at a more like activities level, really where you're looking at how you can complement or fill gaps when it comes to the specific outcomes. Again, establishing clear roles and responsibilities, developing a coordinated action plan is really important. It outlines specific activities, timelines, and milestones, as well as the activities are coordinated and sequenced in a way that maximizes their impact and effectiveness. And this is definitely like across multiple partners, right? And so you may be having, in one of the ones I worked with, you had a university partnering with Hawaiian focused charter schools in that area. And so you had a big organization working within a specific team with charter schools in order to sort of really meet that outcome and developing a coordinated plan. And then one of the things you want to do is promote information sharing and communication, both internally and externally, and then really monitoring the progress and adapt as needed. And so wanting to have regular monitoring of the progress and the common goals and objectives and the coordinated action plan, both internally and then also communicating that externally, whether it's externally through the chain and the framework of collective impact, or even into the partnering organizations, and then, of course, the larger community. And then don't forget this. Sometimes we always forget this. We want to make sure that we're celebrating achievements and that we learn from our failures. Even though sometimes failures may hurt while you're going through it, I really get a lot out of learning. I think I get more learning from my failures than I do my successes. One of the things you want to do in order to establish clear roles is really to look at assessing your team regarding collective impact roles. Your team should consider the roles that need to be filled in successfully implementing your plan. And you do want to make sure that you assess your current strengths and weaknesses and brainstorm strategies to strategically engage and recruit more organizations to fill those gaps that you may have identified. And so let me share with you an actual example. And this one was something that I was fortunate enough to be in on. And we had studied the Strive Together model, and we thought, oh, wow, this looks great. And this does address the needs of Native Hawaiians. But what we wanted to do was sort of expand it and make it more for us. And so in order to come up with our common agenda, and part of the research that we did was we engaged young, well, not even young, we engaged Native Hawaiian professionals who were in STEAM or STEM fields. And our goal really, you can see our mission right there, was that Lona Nui has a collective impact they wanted to increase the number of Native Hawaiians in STEAM, post-secondary studies, careers, and businesses here in Hawaii. And so we then went out to those professionals, Native Hawaiian, and what we did was we asked them each what was their roadmap to this career and if they could share that. And it was super interesting. They created these beautiful pieces of art. And one of the things we learned from them is that all of them really, at a very early age, were engaged in cultural practices and or learning their native language, learning Hawaiian language. And that there was a formal education, which was found in school, and then there was an informal education that was found in either family and or communities. And that informal was really connected to culture and language and cultural practices, while the formal education was more connected to Western models of education and information. And those two things remain sort of in parallel. And it wasn't until later in their life that they were able to join those two streams and to create purposeful professions in STEAM fields where they were to bring their cultural knowledge and their formal knowledge together. And so one of the key pieces we really wanted to work on was making that stream happen earlier and sooner. And so as you can see under community level outcomes, we really wanted to identify that be a strand, that continuous engagement activities that incorporate cultural practices, high expectations, and increasing levels of difficulty, responsibility, and accomplishment. And those last things, the incorporate cultural practices, high expectations, and increasing levels of difficulty, responsibility, and accomplishments, are English words for Hawaiian cultural values. And so we use that to translate what we were talking about. And then as you can see below that, we mapped out what that looks like. And that's by looking at data for Native Hawaiians. And so those were our key indicators. But how does that relate to, developing, reinforcing activities? And so one of the first groups that got together, the working group, was around kindergarten readiness. And this working group was really made up of, formal preschool programs, Punana or Hawaiian immersion preschool program. We also had some university participation. We had some people within our community who do child care services out of their homes. We had also the charter school was in Hawaii was just starting this whole early child education. So we had a sort of broad array of people who were involved in really prior to kindergarten. So real preschool, also we had a hospital that was involved in sort of prenatal care and some doctors that were really interested in it. And what they did was one of the first things they came around which was really interesting, was the need to create a way to both find and employ highly qualified early childhood substitutes, because a lot of the people working within early child education did not have somebody they could sort of lean on that could be sick. Maybe their kids got sick, that they could actually take a day off, and or for the program to be able to pull their regular teachers out in order to develop their professionalism and their skills. And so what this group came together and did was to create a shared substitute pool. So they recruited people, they shared in the training of this substitute pool, and then on any given day, they had a coordinator of that substitute pool. On any given day, or even in a planned scenario, they were able to call in and organize substitutes to come in during the teacher's absence and or when there was a need for professional development. And so that was a great and really successful program. They also came together to really work on an early childhood education summit. And so they pulled all different types of people together all the programs, and they provided professional development, particularly around looking at ways in order to integrate Hawaiian language and cultural-based education and practices into the daily academic activities of their school, and to see those two things as being the same thing, that there wasn't just cultural activities and then there was academics, that those are two of the same, they were the same thing. And we had another group focused around early college that sort of got together and were thinking about, because there were small charter schools who had small enrollment in high school. And what they thought was they would come together and create one high school together, where their middle school students would all go to one high school, sort of like in a district area, because of all of the low enrollment. And they thought that that would be a great way in order to achieve that. And then also partnering heavily with the University of Hawaii and Hawaii Community College around early college development. And so that's just an example of some of the ways in which you can be engaged in mutually reinforcing activities. I'll take a breath there. Are there any questions, Dave?
Not at this time,
Okay,
Alani.
awesome. Sorry, I'll go wet my whistle there. Moving on to the next element of collective impact. That's really focused around continuous communication. Again, you wanted to establish communication channels both within the collective as well as outside of the collective, defining communication protocols, making sure, you know, if you have a large collective, that everyone is sort of communicating in the same way with the branding, making sure we're utilizing the same terminology, that we can all explain this collective and what our part is in the larger collective. Of course, developing a communication plan, and also really wanting to foster a culture of openness and trust. Again, communication is a key piece of that. And this was not, again, just to be held with a few, it's also to provide within the collective and the partnering organizations, both the training, the access to technology and collaborative tools, and providing support up and down the collective impact. And it says, I put in here two-way communication, but this morning, as I was reviewing that, it's actually multiple ways of communication, engaging various stakeholders, being able to talk to, having people being able to talk to elders and kupuna, as well as school-age children, parents, and then your state legislature or your or a potential funder. And so really wanting to have the capacity and capability for everyone to be communicating. Also, you want to, again, regularly evaluate, and then, of course, make sure you're celebrating. Excuse me. Again, because communication is a really important part of collective impact, it includes the need to establish both formal and informal mechanisms. And so here's a tool around called the 4Ms. This tool is designed to help you map out the most effective approach to continuously communicate about how your collective how your collective impact plan is evolving, the progress that's being made on moving forward, the shared measures, and also how best to share lessons learned with one another. And so this tool is called the 4Ms of effective communication. And so the first M is the message. What actions do we want this person to do? The second is a member. Who is the target of this message? The third M is method. What communication tools will work best, in particular for both the target as well as the message? And then 4, moment. When is the best time to convey this message? And so this is a really helpful tool. Whether you're in collective impact or not, this is a really helpful tool for communicating what's going on, both within and both within the people within your organization as well as outside. This is another tool that you'll find in the resources I provided. It's called Plan on a Page. I thought that this was really cool way to illustrate some of your key and important communication pieces. Because it's so important, the Plan on a Page is a concise one-page synthesis of the key design elements of collective impact approach. Okay, it's on the Plan on a Page. It should include a variety of different information, but we'll go a little bit more into it here. It should include the name of the initiative and the aspirational goal or the common agenda in the banner across the top of the page. The address and contact information about the initiative should be across the bottom of the page, including links to any of your social media profiles. The center sections of this plan should include the top four things that should be included are something that makes a compelling case for this approach, information about the important research or evidence base that informs this work, a list of key strategic partners leading or supporting the initiative, and the success measures used to track progress. And so again, here's a really great example. And this can be both used in your organization, on your website, social media. It can be a great thing to pass out as you go and try to recruit new partners, or even for your partners to use to be able to communicate their participation in this collective impact. The last key element of collective impact is around a backbone organization and the responsibilities of that organization. Now, this is sort of is a key piece of what makes collective impact different than, let's say, other collaborative efforts, and that there's one organization that's sort of working behind the scenes to make sure that all of these key elements at all of the different levels are working and functioning well. And so one of the things that's really important is that they are facilitating and supporting the success of the collective impact initiative. And here's some of those areas in which they are engaged in. One is facilitation of the collaborative process. So the backbone organization facilitates this progress among diverse stakeholders involved. And this really includes convening meetings, facilitating discussions, and fostering consensus building. And again, like I said, relationship building to ensure alignment toward a common goal. Another important piece is around coordination of activities. And so again, that backbone organization helps to coordinate the activities of participating organizations and stakeholders to ensure that they are working towards shared objectives. This again involves aligning strategies, sharing information, and maximizing resources to achieve collective impact. It's depending on your size and your funding. I've seen collective impact have, for each sort of like working group have their own coordinator. I've also seen where there's one coordinator over several collective impact working groups with sort of lead people who are working on facilitating the larger maybe leadership groups. So different ways in which you can configure this for yourself. Data collection and analysis, again, that's a really key piece. And that is really the responsibility of the backbone organization to both collect, analyze, and share data to track progress, measure outcomes, and inform decision makers. And so you can imagine if you have maybe 4 working groups that in preparation for each meeting, your data collection group is making sure that the facilitators of those meetings have the data that they will need to get in front of that working group so that they can make informed decisions based on the data that they agreed upon was important for sharing. And also resource mobilization. This is a real key piece of and function of the backbone organization. The backbone organization, in many instances, is reaching out and gathering funding for particular initiatives of the collective impact, and also supporting, bringing in expertise, and also in-kind support. It can, maybe like that, for example, the example I shared around that shared uh, early child education substitute group, the Collective Impact Backbone organization went out for funding and was able to fund the coordinator of that mutually reinforced activities. And then the organizations that are involved could just call in and there was a coordinator, but the Backbone organization did the funding. The other thing I've seen, the other example I've seen is where multiple organizations may go in for a grant, and within that grant, they write the shared responsibility or their program into, or their working group initiative into that grant application. And they commit to sharing that in order to build their organization. But a lot of times the Backbone organization is the one that helps to facilitate all the financial business going on behind the scenes as it relates to resources, as well as expertise. And so I've seen a lot of, one collective impact I was involved in was focused around helping charter schools build facilities. One of the working groups was on that. And what they did was they brought in architects and engineers and contractors to really help inform the members of that group on the process of facility development, and then also brought in a professional fundraiser to help that. And so it's not just money, but it also brings in expertise. And then capacity building and support, again, that's really important. That can be all the way from, again, within the collective, as well as sort of reaching out into the partners. And so that was really like that early child education one. They put together that conference, and that was really providing capacity building within the actual organizations that were partners of the collective impact. Again, wanting to be that hub where communication and outreach is sort of going in and out of, really is a responsibility of the Backbone organization. Also broad evaluation and learning. It could also include policy advocacy and system change. And so if, for example, one of the working groups wanted to maybe focus on, let's say, changing some of the laws as it relates to early child education, the Backbone organization could really help bring in the capacity to be able to do some of the work around policy advocacy and system change. And then again, they are really sort of collecting all the information and then providing it out in order to facilitate adaptation and iteration. And of course, the Backbone organization helps to make sure that leadership and the vision is sort of on task and moving forward. So here's an example of a collective impact structure. It has formal members, but also seeks to work with other stakeholders and community representatives beyond its actual members. So for example, the number of formal members may be limited to keep logistics, manageable, but certainly sorry, I'm getting all tongue twisted. Certain strategies may require working groups that can have additional partners from community organizations and stakeholders. And everybody can provide their input at the various levels of an actual collective impact. And so, like I said earlier, you might have one organization, for example, maybe it's a university. They may be playing at all different levels, where it's really important that they are on the steering committee, but it's also, they have programs that are addressing like early child education quality. And so they may be pulling in some of their program people to participate in those smaller groups. Or you could have a school, maybe an early child education program out there that is also part of the working group. It just really depends. But you can see, you can have different levels of involvement. All righty, I'm going to take a little break. Any questions, Dave, just to check, and I'll take a sip of water.
Not as of yet, though. I'm sure they're going to be coming in.
Alrighty, let's get into the benefits and challenges. So we've gotten deep into collective impact, what it looks like, what it means. But why would we do this? That's always sort of a really great question to ask. One of the benefits around collective impact is really looking at amplifying your impact. So, for example, a collective impact initiative focused on improving early child education collaborates with local schools, community organizations, and government agencies. By aligning their efforts and resources, they implement a comprehensive program that includes parent education, maybe teacher training, and access to quality preschool programs. As a result of it, the children in their community show significant improvement in school readiness, academic performance, and social emotional development, demonstrating how collaborative efforts can really lead to greater outcomes than individual interventions. And that's like, again, that example that I shared with you earlier, that was really the idea behind their shared professional development. And in particular, because they were working with other preschool programs that they didn't start out as being like Hawaiian language immersion, or they didn't start out as being Hawaiian culture-based programs. And so, but they were very interested in that, and they saw the benefit of that. And so this was a way in order to sort of get that into educational settings at the preschool level that may not have had the opportunity to participate in that type of professional development with their teachers. And so they got to work with teachers who were experts in this area to develop lesson plans and look at manipulatives and look at how to integrate language within maybe a bilingual setting. And so really beneficial. They were very well seasoned early child education professionals and teachers, but they had never been to a training like that before. So it was a really great way to sort of expand and amplify the impact of language education as well as culture-based education. And then again, sharing of resources. That's a great, again, example of sharing resources where you're taking your already seasoned teachers and they're providing some expertise to other teachers. Sometimes I've seen where programs sort of like tag off of one another. And so maybe, you have a program that is doing really well at language, but no, that wouldn't work. Maybe they're doing really well at doing hands-on, sort of like Montessori fashion early education, but they want to add a cultural aspect onto that. So they were able to share resources together with other teachers and professionals. Another great example of shared resources is, again, that example I shared around charter schools and bringing together the experts that were working in construction to be able to develop the capacity within smaller schools to be able to tackle that huge endeavor. And then also one of the benefits of collective impact is really looking at sustainable change, long-term solutions that are changing the system, and also enhanced innovation. Collective impact really creates a place where you can have a diversity of perspectives and fosters really innovative solutions. And one of the things I thought was innovative was really, again, we had these charter schools who had small high school populations, and what they wanted to do was to come around and work collaboratively to create a shared high school experience. And so bringing all of their different excellent teachers and excellent practices and curriculum together in order to create one stellar high school versus everyone trying to do it on their own. But there are challenges with collective impact. And so here are some of the challenges. It is a time commitment. Really achieving collective impact requires a sustained effort and a long-term investment. And so this is really where it's key to have sort of your leadership and organizations be committed to this because it is a long haul. and we know that because if you're trying to change systems, it requires a long-term effort. And I know most of you are engaged in one way or another to do some system changing work as it relates to Native education. Also, there's the power dynamics. And so in a collective impact initiative, again, focused on improving educational outcomes for underserved communities, there are power dynamics among stakeholders that can create challenges. Um, I know, working in small communities, you grow up working with partners in other Native organizations. Sometimes, organizations want to hold on to their levels of influence and resources and priorities. And so, again, building trusting relationships and wanting to uh, rebalance power is really a challenge, but can be beneficial. And I want to share this fabulous story of a great sort of sharing of resources and definitely a power dynamic. At one time, I worked for a little Hawaiian language culture-based immersion school located in my community. And I think it was like maybe April or May. It was towards the end of the school year. We had a huge earthquake, which signaled that the volcano was going to erupt. And sure enough, it began to erupt. There was that big eruption that we had a couple of years ago. Well, several years ago, actually. And our school was right on the coastline, like right across of the ocean. And tsunamis have always been a really concerning issue with our schools. While we love to get our students out to the natural resources and the environment, we also know and have studied that when Pele or the earth or the volcano begins to erupt, that creates earthquakes, which can then generate tsunamis. And so our parents were worried after that large earthquake, and our students were worried, and our teachers were worried, and our community was worried. And so because I was participating in a collective impact, and we got and built a really strong relationship with the University of Hawaii at Hilo leadership, I was able to walk up to Kahakaula and ask the university and some key partners who I was working with in the collective if they could assist in finding us some space that we could move our entire school to for the remaining of the year. And because of the aloha, definitely, but also the relationships, that happened in less than a week. We were able to move our entire school of about 275 students, K through, I think it was 8 at that time, up to the university campus where we were away from the shore. The power dynamics, the university is this big power player, but because of the relationships built, and the aloha again by the university staff, they were able to open their doors for us, and we were able to access that. So again, I think that's just a wonderful example that happens when you are intentional about developing relationships within your collective impact that goes sort of beyond sort of the collective impact measuring process. The measurement and evaluation, again, can also be a challenge. Again, sometimes that comes to like sharing a protocol, wanting to make sure that each organization is maintaining its rules and responsibilities and regulations as it relates to data, also wanting to honor the community in which the data is coming for, to be able to collect and communicate that in a right and I like to say pono balanced way is really can be a challenge. Asking people to change what information they're collecting and change some of the systems, and I don't say people, but also organizations can be difficult. And then there's also this idea of resource allocation. This can mean that some organizations get funded, some of maybe the backbone organization may be getting funding that maybe another organization used to solely get. And so again, really that all comes down to, and we know this in Native communities around relationship, but it also has to do with sort of changing this mindset around lack. And that if somebody gets, then somebody doesn't get, but that we can, with collective impact, we can all get, and then everyone can have more. So that's just some of the challenges of collective impact. So here's some, excuse me, keys to success. One is really having some strong leadership. What you'll notice is that in most collective impact, it's usually coming already from a backbone organization. So from like maybe a university or a local government, or maybe a funder or a collaboration of funders is actually pulling this together, and is the leadership and the sort of like catalyst for starting this collective impact initiative. However, I've been involved in several of them that have started from the community up, which is a little bit more challenging, particularly when it comes to all of the work it takes to do that. But sometimes, I don't know, I think it's sometimes better to struggle and to learn and to grow your systems so that you can always constantly improve, and to actually go out and get those resources to make it happen. Also, inclusive engagement is really key. So bringing in partners that may not, thinking outside of the box as it relates to partners, but also wanting to make sure that there's representation at your table for the different target communities and people that may be affected, inviting parents, maybe even inviting students, engaging people who are affected by the social condition into the collective impact is really an important piece of it. And then being adaptable. Again, like I said a couple of times, nothing set in stone. Wanting to make sure that you are making changes that are data-driven, that everyone is agreed upon, and that it's a collective movement forward. And then, of course, celebrating progress. You want to make sure you take time. Sometimes we're so busy doing the work that we don't take any time to thank our communities, to thank our stakeholders, and also to thank ourselves for the amazing work we're doing and the steps we're taking in moving that societal and systemic change forward. Phew, that was a bunch. So looks like I have a couple minutes. I don't know if there's any questions, Dave.
At the moment, there are none, but I'm sure some might come in
All
while
right.
while you're catching up. We do have to think of the delay in the feed here, so.
Okay.
But you've been doing a wonderful job, Alani.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Well, I hope it's been um helpful and meaningful. You know, you don't have to, being from a person who started one from the ground up, from community up, you don't have to take everything on at one time. You can maybe start from a working group and have that working group identify, that societal or the systemic change that you want to make. There are different ways to come at it. And the other thing too is, like I said, there are some practices that can be implemented, and you don't have to call it collective impact. You can call it, Jack in a Box for all, intents purposes, but there may be some of these pieces that could be really helpful to you in the work that you're doing.
You did get a comment.
Okay.
A lot of folks are saying thank you. This
Oh,
was fun and informative session. I look forward to implementing some of your strategies.
awesome. Awesome. If you do, please let me know, because like I said, I'm a collective impact nerd and I love to hear about the work. Or if you want to talk story about it more, I'm game. So just let me know. If you're still thinking about a question, or maybe you don't have any other questions, we can stop here as well. I just want to say mahalo for joining. Again, I hope this was beneficial. Please go check out all those resources I shared with you. A lot of great toolboxes. Again, these are tools that you can use in your board meetings and maybe another group that you're working on. It doesn't just have to be collective impact. These are tools that are really very transferable into other settings and other initiatives. If you want to talk story further about collective impact, or you want to share, what you're doing with it, go ahead and you can email me at olily@seiservices.com. Would love to hear about that.
Indeed. And before you go, don't forget to click on that survey. Let us
Yeah.
know. Let us know what's going on. Click that survey button. It's over in the menu on the right. Also, too, stick around for that networking session coming on later. It's going
Yeah.
to be really fun.
Yep. Again, thank you so much for joining and join that networking session. You're out a little early. How early? Oh, we're about 10 minutes early.
Yeah, about
Yeah.
9. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're a little early, so you can maybe run to the restroom, get a snack, and then I'll see you in the networking session. Thank you again for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Aloha.